I would not use the word sailed, but
Right.
This morning is about building together, and it's about building spiritually. Sometimes it's about building physically, and those of you who've been through a building project, whether it's your kitchen or a church building, know that sometimes physical building can separate you from spirituality really quickly. And so I'm going to try in 20 minutes or so to tell you the story of the Central region and our adventure that Doug described a little bit last night. It is called Building Together because it was a true episode of really working together to make decisions about what was best for our ministry. And there's a lot of talk in the church, you guys who are church leaders from other congregations, a lot of talk in our movement about the wisdom of owning versus renting facilities. I grew up at a time when we talked about we were trying to create a movement, not a monument. It's fine for us to meet in tents. We can, there's a lot of actually virtue in not owning a church building and dumping all that money into it. And so with years and with perspective, we've come to see that that's not necessarily the case. And so as you're thinking about your own congregation, your own region, and you're trying to make this decision about whether to own or rent, we need to think about what does my region really need? And we begin to think about this in the sense of what did the Central region really need? And I think as you sit there this morning, you probably fall in one of three categories. You fall in the first category where you're really not sure whether we should be owning or renting. What does the Bible say about that? The second category is, man, I'd like to have a facility that we own, but I'm not sure we can afford it. I'm not sure we can pull it off. Buildings cost money. Or you're in a third category where you think, we have it, we could do it, but I'm just not sure how to do it. And so quickly, I want to hit all three of those things. If you're in none of those three categories, you can get a head start on lunch. You can go ahead. All right, so should we do it? Should we own or should we rent? Well, the Bible is essentially neutral about it. Jesus doesn't talk a lot about it. The first century Christians, they met in the best building in the city at the time, the temple. They met in the temple courts. They met there often. It was very informal. It was a different way of worshiping. They were coming out of a long history of temple worship, and Jesus took the emphasis away from that. He said, a time is coming when you're not going to worship in a temple. You're going to worship in your heart. But that didn't talk about what kind of facility it would be. When the disciples marveled about how splendid the temple was, he said, this is all going to go away. Shortly after I leave, this is all going to be torn down. And so in Acts, by the time the first century church got started in Acts 12:12, we see that they largely met in houses because they were essentially an underground group, persecuted, and they had to keep groups small and kind of cellular. By the time the church became more established, the first history we have of a dedicated facility for Christian worship dates back to about 240 AD. And in eastern Syria, and it was a small two-room house that they combined two houses together to make a little place to worship. By the time Constantine professed Christianity in 325 AD, that's when the state money began to come in and build larger facilities for larger groups to meet. And so there is really no biblical directive about whether you should own or rent a facility. We've got to get our heads past that. It should be talking about what makes most sense for our congregation, for now and in the long term. So that comes back to our mission. And, Steve Kennard quotes this little passage in his book. It comes out of Matthew 26. At judgment, nobody's going to ask about whether we were successful in our capital campaign or whether we spent too much money on a building or we spent too much money on renting facilities. You're going to ask, what did we do for people? Amen. What did we love? Did we serve? Did we give? Did we evangelize? And so this became, as we were beginning to put together our mission statement, we went back to the mission statement, which is, will this facility help us to save the lost? Will this facility help us to reach the people around us? This is also a scripture. This was what Jesus said to his disciples. This is what we've heard since the days we were baptized. The fields are white around us. And so this became our mantra. As we began to think about buying a church building that would serve the central region, we began to try to frame it in the context of how can this help us to be more fruitful as we reach out to our community. We purposely avoided any kind of reference to Nehemiah about building the wall, to the temple about building the great temple. We focused instead on Sister Sally here. And Sister Sally's out there in the garden. She's planting her seeds. She's watering her seeds. Sometimes other disciples come and water the seed that you plant. But eventually, there is a harvest. And she's using a tool. And that tool is a hoe. And with a hoe, you can do so much. But if you have a better tool, you can have more of a harvest. So this is Brother Matt. And that's how we framed our campaign, is that we're creating a better tool. We're creating a tool that will allow us to reach a larger population, do more things, and create a more bountiful harvest because we have a more powerful tool. So we developed a kind of 3-point mission statement for this building. We were going to design this building so that it would strengthen our church. We would be able to offer more opportunities for education, more opportunities to do kind of outreach things, from teen events to Bible talks to parties, to just create a life in the church. Brian Schwarzenschreiber this morning in his talk alluded to how extensively this building has been used. We would use it to reach out to the lost, whether it's through the financial peace classes, which happen in the building, or various other activities. We would use this building to increase our presence in the community in these western suburbs. And then finally, we would use it to serve the poor and needy. That's one of the things the church, this is actually the second facility that the church has purchased. The first one was in the metro region out in Framingham, which is a home to the Framingham Food Pantry. And that has become a kind of congregational, if not regional, model for how to use the facility of the building to host a food pantry that served, I think, over 300 families on a month-to-month basis out there. And so that is a way that we can really be involved in our community, and we designed the building around being able to host that function. We also understood from the people in Arlington that one of the biggest needs in our community was elder care. And so we're focusing a lot of our benevolent efforts on trying to reach out to elderly folks, and we're just getting started on that. But this has also become home of our Hope Scouts, and they do food drives, clothing drives. They do a lot of benevolent activities that gets to some of the character issues that Barbara and Daryl were talking about, teaches generosity, teaches benevolence, and benefits the community, all of which are kind of hosted through this facility. So those are our 3 reasons for having this building. The question then became, all right, if we have the right mentality about this building, do we have the capacity to do it? Now, for those of you like Jim McCartney, this is the exciting part.
Bring it on, baby.
In general, Americans are giving more and more to charity each year. $373 billion in 2015 was given to charity. You see the slope of the ramp. We are giving more to charities now on a cost-adjusted basis than we ever have in the history of the nation. And of that $373 billion, which is about 2% of our GDP, 1/3 of it goes to religious organizations. And so about $120 billion is going to support religious organizations. That's just generally. So I think that, conceptually, the capacity, people's willingness to give was there. But what about our problem? We had done some due diligence. Doug had turned us onto this building. We walked through it. We had a lot of different people walk through it. We had contractors walk through it, developed an early cost model. And we quickly saw that this place that Doug had found had some issues. It had a lot of potential. A lot of potential. And so it was about $3 million away from living up to its potential. And it was listed at the time for $1.125 million. So we developed a project budget of about $5.4 million. And we said, can we really bite that off? And so through the hard work of Gary Slobodnik and the board and various others, we were able to arrange a 60-40 mortgage. In other words, the bank was willing to take on about 40% of that $5 million, which left us, which was awesome. It's for those of you who've been in it, it's hard to get a bank to finance a church building. But because of our long-standing relationship with our bank, they were willing to do a mortgage for us. And that left us with about $3.125 million to raise. Now, how could we do that? That's where Mike Volney came in. And Mike really helped us to see how he does it at Harvard. He's actually doing a class this afternoon. You'll all get to hear from him about legacy and state planning. But Mike really advised us about, what is the capacity of the church to be able to give? And how should we structure this campaign? And so basically, we did a little test, a little internal test, and I don't know if you can read the type there, but we took the median family income of Arlington at the time, about $107,000 per family. We took the median single income for a single living in Arlington at about $71,000 a year. And we knew that our region, we don't track who gives what in the congregation. We don't ask people what your annual salaries are. But we figured we had about an average population in our region. And we knew we had 64 families and 63 singles. And so if you did a little bit of math, if you multiplied those medians and then took 10% of it, we arrived at what we called our giving capacity, which was about $1.1 million a year. Now our budget, which we were tracking right on our budget, was about $832,000 a year. So we were only asking the congregation to give slightly less than the 10% of their average. And on top of that, we had a special missions goal of $160,000. So that together brought us to about 900, and I don't see the math there, about 922,000. You subtract that from the 1.132, and we had an additional capacity to give, just estimating, of about $140,000. And here was the goal. We wanted to raise this money within 5 years and not affect any of our other giving. We didn't want the weekly to go down. We didn't want to pull any money away from missions. So we were just saying we want to rely on what we think is the additional capacity of the region to give. So 5 times 140, $700,000. That's a long way from 3.125 million. This was the part where Doug was getting the memo with all the red on it from the board. We had a partner. We share the facility with the Spanish region. And the Spanish, they did the same kind of analysis, and they said, we can raise $300,000. So now we're up to $1 million. We're still $2.125 million short. We don't have the capacity to do this. Don't buy the building. And Doug said, well, if we could eliminate some of these obstacles, it still would make sense, right? Yeah, okay. It would. It's kind of like the old joke, how do you live like a millionaire? Well, first you go find $1 million. How do you own a building? So we're about $2.125 million short based on our models of capacity. Doug was undaunted. He came forward and he said, look, there's one family in the congregation who's willing to step up and make a commitment to $1.8 million. How does that hit you? I said, that's impactful, Doug. You know what? That's amazing. You take the $1.8 million, you add to it our $1 million over 5 years that we can give. We're still short. We're still $325,000 short. Doug says, I have faith. I have faith in you. All right. So how did we do it?
Oh, good.
We just... All right. So this all, as you've heard already, comes out of 2010, the 2020 vision planning to have a regional meeting facility, whether owned or rented, within 20 minutes of everybody in the Boston congregation. Arlington was targeted. We looked at a lot of different properties. Other people were looking besides Doug, but Doug did find this one. And we put together in 2011 the due diligence committee. And the reason I'm taking you through all this is to get you to understand this was not one person's work. This was done with a lot of people. We brought in people from real estate all over our region and our congregation, contractors, engineers, and we really did this together. And then finally in November of 2011, the elders decided that they could move forward and make an offer on the building. We thought it was worth only $800,000. They thought it was worth $1.1 million, and they said no. We continued to have faith. We put together a committee to look at how we would design this facility. We decided that we needed to, a project this large would require an architect, so we interviewed architects. We hired the one we thought was best, and he turned out to do a great job. And then we had an idea session. We opened it up to the whole region, and we said, if we were to buy this building, what would you want it to be? And that was very important. And not a lot of people turned out, but about 30 or 40 of us got in a room and talked about how great it would be to not have to carry those big children's ministries things everywhere we go. And how great it would be to be able to host dinners for people in the community. And how great it would be to not have to move the sound equipment and to actually be able to do some theatrical things. And we really caught a vision for what it could be. And so we set aside a day of prayer and fasting, and the whole region fasted. And at this time we were combined with the downtown region. We had not yet split out to form the Arlington Worship Center. And the elders decided to raise the offer to $1 million. That was accepted, and we moved forward. So in September of 2012, and you notice this takes a while, we formed the Capital Campaign Committee and began to try to raise the $3.125 million, of which we already had this lead gift in hand. So Mike, Doug alluded to it last night, Mike, through his staff at his workplace at Harvard, who do this all the time, they put together an eloquent, 6-page case for us that we were able to give to people and say, imagine the possibility of owning this facility in Arlington, 2 blocks from the Main and Main intersection in Arlington. And one of the first steps is we called together what we thought were 20 to 25 of the the people in the region most able to give. And we hosted a dinner for them. And Mike stood up and others, the elders stood up and really made the case and made an appeal. What would you be willing to give? Again, from your heart, how much would you be willing to pledge to this? And then, after receiving those pledges, we did another dinner, this time for the whole region, and made the same appeal to them. And at the end of that, rather than being $325,000 short, we were $250,000 short. And we said, close enough. We'll go forward, we'll begin design, we'll begin construction, and we'll just try to save $254,000 over construction. Now, you know how that's going to work out, right? But look at that. From downtown, the region we were leaving, 18 people said, even though you're leaving us, we're going to support your work in the new place. From the Spanish ministry, of a congregation of about 450, they had 400 who made a pledge. 65%, 64% in general were willing to pledge to this. And we got the widows' pledges. We got single moms who pledged $20. And that was great. And we also got some people who had more of a capacity to give who said, I can take a bigger chunk. And we're close. So we moved forward. We dealt with the local historic commission. They're now our friends. They weren't always our friends. And finally, in October 13, 2.5 years after we started this pursuit, we finally get a building permit. There's Richard there with Mark Buckholtz, Kelly Amaya, Valder Koha, and the 2 state representatives that represent Arlington, and the town manager, who's become quite a friend. The town manager says, anything you guys need, you just let us know. Largely through these efforts. And so, again, another 2 years later, in January of 16, the building opened. We had a grand opening celebration. We had an arts night, arts and music night. We had a youth and family night. We had an open house for the community, for all the construction design people who had worked on the building. And it was just a grand celebration. And now we're transitioning from our construction loan to our permanent loan. And the elders and boards come back and they said, you remember that $254,000? You didn't save it during construction. Are you guys going to raise it? Or are we going to add on to our mortgage? And so for the past 2 months, we've been really struggling to find that additional money. And what has occurred to us is we looked, and of those 86 people who had made pledges, 86 giving units who had made pledges, about half of those people were either ahead or right on track with their 5-year plan. And there were 4 or 5 people who had been baptized or who had moved in, 4 or 5 families who had moved into the region. We said, let's go back. We're $254,000 short. Let's go back and see if we can close it out. And so we did that, and I did that. And I just grabbed people in fellowship. I called them at their homes. Some of you are in the audience. You've received the call from me. And one by one, we said, would you be willing to take your 5-year pledge and turn it into a 6-year pledge? Because I'd already done the math, and I knew if everybody extended by 1 year that we'd get there. And so everybody said, why not? A lot of people said, hey, I can do more now. I can do it right now. And so literally, I had these slides done another way, but literally Friday morning, I made one more phone call, and we're there. So we actually have a surplus of $1,200. So it's a great success story. All the elements had to be there. All the cooperation, all of the hard work by all the committees, and it was a 5-year process. But now we have a facility that'll serve us for 30 or 40 years. That has we designed it the way that it really serves our worship. It serves our activity. It's become the kind of physical home that we're proud to invite people into. And I think already we're very glad we did it. Maybe everybody except Brian and Rebecca. Thank you. Oh, I forgot my last slide. This is bonus. How did it affect weekly and missions giving? This is 13, 14, and 15, and I know you can't see the colors, but this lower curve here is our, whoops, sorry, go back. There it is. The lower curve on the top is our budget. The darker curve on the top, annual budget for the region, 13, 14, and 15 are the 3 data points. The top curve that tracks it slightly but is ahead of it is our weekly giving. So the weekly giving did not go down. We continued to meet our budget. The lower 2 curves are our special missions contribution. The bottom curve in the gold is our goal for our region. The top curve in the blue is what we gave. So during this period of raising all this money, our weekly contribution nor our missions contributions went down at all. And in fact, they've gone up. And so there it is. It's right there.